Greetings, captains, and welcome once again to the Tribble Timewarp. It is the 5th of July. If you're in the United States, I hope Independence Day went well yesterday. Of course, being British, all I can say is that we didn't really need those colonies anyway. Yeah, right. Rest of the world, I hope you had a perfectly spectacular, normal, and generally pleasant day. On to business, however, there has been a new patch. I'll stick an annotation up with a link to the full notes, but it included quite a few changes to the fleet starbase. Starting with this new style of console is dotted around the base in various locations. You'll see them around. It's a nice nod to the holographic Minority Report style interfaces that have been doing the rounds in some of the comics and some of the bridge sets. The bar area has had a few more tweaks. You can see where they've started adding the disco lighting, as well as the beginnings of furniture, stools, and indeed the bar, which is a fairly major component, really. I'm not sure what that use icon is. I'm wondering if fleet officers will get the ability to project the fleet logo or the UFP or the Klingon Empire symbols from that roof device thing, because it's either some sort of projector or a really, really expensive disco ball. Mail is there, that has moved. Bank will be there as and when we get the fleet level and the starbase level high enough, which we haven't yet. The Officer of the Watch has picked up a quest. This is daily, can be repeated every 20 hours or so, and offers up to 5 fleet marks. Right, well, he doesn't seem to be going anywhere, so let's get on with this quest. So, it's basically a straight memory game. Now, there ought to be a cargo manifest around here somewhere. There we go, he can give it to us. Right, so remember which components you need to get, and go talk to the freighter captains to get the parts delivered. Obviously, for each freighter you get right, you get 1 fleet mark, so potentially this is up to 5 fleet marks for about 5 minutes work, which is about on a par in terms of reward versus time for the space missions and indeed the colony invasion and the incursion. So let's find the console and go talk to these freighter captains. That isn't it. They've changed the style of the duty manager console. I'm guessing that new holographic console style is going to be the standard for the fleet starbase, in which case hopefully there'll be more than 2 varieties of it. Anyway, you can see how this mission works for the freighter side of things. You click on the request and it will cycle through what you want that particular freighter queue to deliver. When you have the right one, you tell it to confirm the request, like so, and move on to the next queue. Now, I believe you can go back to a queue if you've reset it. I have to admit, I didn't try it because I had cheated slightly. I had the camera handy, so I just took a quick photo of the screen, and I literally had the list of what the captain wanted in front of me. Let's face it, that is as near as you're going to get to having a pad with the duty manifest in your hand while you're talking to the freighters. Or if I was feeling a little more low-tech, I suppose I could have just used pencil, paper, or indeed the Mark I brain, which sometimes sees far, far too little use, but there we go. You can just check the cargo manifest if you really get stumped, but obviously you can't bring that up while you've got the freighter queue up. So ostensibly there is a bit of a memory game involved. Once you've got all 5 manifests done, you can go back to the Officer of the Watch, and presumably your response will vary depending on how many you got right. I will answer that question when I deliberately mess the mission up once that cooldown has expired. So that's the Officer of the Watch mission. 5 fleet marks once a day if you're feeling a little on the lazy side or just don't have the time to hit the PvE queues. Moving on. Now, there was one suggestion that that race area is going to be some kind of conference setup, but we shall see. I think it's a bit open and exposed, but then I take the whole view that this is some sort of concourse and not an operations deck. Right, fleet goodies. Ladies and gentlemen, start composing your shopping lists now. Mark 12, triple damage modifiers and one other modifier. All weapons, all varieties of weapon, both space and ground. Indeed, you can get some very nasty advanced armours as well. The operational assets are in their preliminary forms on top. I'm just going to scroll through this so you can see the details.
Starfleet personnel, level 6 security precautions are in effect by order of Starfleet Command.
They may perhaps want to check the volume on some of those PA announcements. It's a little out of whack at times. I'm not sure what's triggering it. However, there is a little bug here. Polaron sniper rifles are missing 2 of their damage bonuses. You can see it's being reflected both in the weapon tooltip and in these short descriptions in the fleet. You'll also notice 0 items remaining at the top of the window. That has to do with the fleet provisioning setup, and we will come to it later. Suffice it to say that, for the moment, I think there are going to be tears at bedtime over the way the provisioning setup is being handled at the moment. However, feast your eyes upon this. When I said they included every single variety and variation of weapon, I really wasn't kidding. Onto the assault weapons, and just shotguns, miniguns, grenade launchers, you name it. This guy has got inventory that would make, well, yeah, you can have yourself a fairly large war with what this dude's got in stock, and best bit, you can do it all again tomorrow as well. Prices aren't too outrageous actually. 8,000 plus pocket change plus, what is that, 3,750 dilithium. Yeah, those PA announcements really need some work. Right, the operational assets. This is where a lot of fleet credits will be going. And you can see that generally it gives you certain things that you wouldn't normally have. So, transphasic platforms, fleet-wide engineering teams, science teams, tactical teams, every kind of turret. Fleet forward base. Now, what that is kind of cool. Bear in mind that these are single-shot items, so basically you can pop down a rapid respawn point, for want of a better term. If you're up against Arvus, rather than go through combat supply and turrets and anything, just slam this down and you are good. Moving on, automatic remodulation for everyone in the team, so if you've got somebody who left their remod at home, no worries, just bring these dudes along. Phaser turrets of a fleet. And then you can start summoning in reinforcements. So Peregrine fighters, cruisers, stalker fighters. Starbases get phaser lances. I mean, yes please. 3 shots. Not sure how effective that's going to be, but if they don't change the way those groups stack up at the end of the Starbase defense mission, that could do some real damage. 3 Dakirs. Basically you can summon just about any kind of ship you care to name. Mine layers. Now I'm not sure, I think the Zealand is the Klingon only version, I'm not sure why I can see this on the Federation side, but we can bring in the Sovereign instead and use it as a mine layer. So you name it, there are all kinds of really handy goodies that can be deployed here. Even as single shot options, 10,000 fleet credits isn't exactly outrageous. It's enough to make you think about deploying it, but yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Now, how often is that going to pulse, I wonder? Because if it's just a one-off expose, then meh. But if it's going to repeatedly expose over, say, 15 or 30 seconds, that could be really, really interesting. Not to mention really, really nasty in PvP. Fortunately, however, I don't believe you can use it in PvP, so the question does not arise. Now, I would show you the space versions of the weapons. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of a bug with this particular vendor at the moment, in that you'll notice that there is no space weapons menu. available to me. I can't get back having selected the op assets. And of course, since it remembers which menu you had open when you last closed the window, it goes straight back to the operational assets, and I can't get back to the weapons. Indeed, even with a different character, it was still doing this. It was still doing this, in fact, 24 hours later, on the same characters, having been logged out for the better part of a day, which is why this is going out on the 5th of July and not the 4th of July. So that's a known issue with the submenus not quite being in yet, and the game's habit of remembering which submenu you had open last. Once the proper menus and submenus are all in, it won't be a problem anymore once they're in. So with that out of the way, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a rant. The object of my irritation, ladies and gentlemen, is the fleet provisioning system. I consider this to be not merely redundant, useless, but to be actively harmful to the game in its present form, which is a fairly strong claim to be making. So let's cover the redundancy aspect of it first. The idea of the fleet provisioning system at the moment seems to be to throttle how fast players can get access to the top-of-the-line ultra-rare Mark 12 equipment, as well as the operational assets, which is laudable in and of itself. Cryptic have to do this because they need to add longevity to Season 6, or people are going to just blow through the content, then turn around and say, well, we're bored, now what? Fair enough, every MMO does this. Even the hardcore PvP ones like World War II and PlanetSide have their ranking and certification systems, which add an extended, almost grindy element to those games. It's redundant in the case of the fleet provisions, however, because there's already another system in the game that serves the same purpose, and that is the fleet credit system. If you think about it, they're both coming from the same aspect, the resources you plough into the Starbase missions. However, the difference is that the resources you plough in get you fleet credits directly, and they get you fleet credits in proportion to the resources you put in. You put more in, you get more out. With the fleet provisions, however, that link is broken. There is a disconnect between the effort you put in and the reward you get. So I can pile in 1% or nil for a given provisioning mission, and if I happen to be online when the provisions come through, I can potentially get those provisions anyway. That doesn't hold true for the fleet credit system. Now, it can be argued at this point that the fleet credit system is similarly open to abuse. If I happen to be on when, say, that requirement for bridge officer skill points comes in, I can fill it up and basically grab a whole wodge of fleet credits. Indeed, I've actually done this with a couple of missions, which is why I'm currently sitting pretty on a good 600,000 plus. The solution to that would be to add in a cap, so you can only earn X thousand credits per day, and if a resource contribution would take you over that, it will simply block the contribution. That's one way of taking it. Another would be to add a percentage cap to how many of each given resource you can add. So again, daily cap, daily limit, you can only burn so many resources to the fleet per day, you can only earn so many credits per day, and your gear access is throttled in that fashion. And you are not dependent on somebody else not getting to the provisions and the resources before you do. Which is where we come into the actively harmful portion of the game. These provisions are going to be allocated in one of two ways. One, it's a free-for-all, in which case, if you're unlucky enough to be offline when that mission completes, then it doesn't matter how many resources you piled in, it doesn't matter how much effort you put in, you're not going to get your shinies. Potentially, you're not going to get your shinies indefinitely. There is no mechanism at the moment in the pure free-for-all system and the fleet mission system as it currently stands to ensure that at some point effort will net reward. Indeed, the fleet provisioning system just breaks that link entirely, which is part of the reason I hate it, and I've made that point before in this rant. I'm probably going to make it again. It is a major, major point in my mind. A compromise system is to say that, okay, you can only pull out so many fleet provisions per day, in which case I have to ask, what is the point? Just up the price of the gear in terms of fleet credits, and then cap the number of credits you get per day, and you achieve the same result. You only have the one currency system. Remember that currency proliferation was a big problem when STO first launched. The whole dilithium patch was designed to compact all these currencies down, and now they're breeding again. They're worse than tribbles. Third option, and this is the one that is really going to harm the game if it's implemented, is that the fleet provisions are under the control of a fleet's officer corps. Human nature being what it is, if person X sees person Y getting resources when they're below them on the leaderboard, then person X is going to start thinking that the officers are showing person Y favouritism, that there is some sort of agreement or behind the scenes deal or conspiracy to cheat person X. They are going to complain about this. Human nature again. Those complaints are going to gather momentum. True or not, the mud is going to stick, and the officer corps are going to be in a no-win situation. If they say, yes, we got this wrong, they're going to get blamed. If they try and deny it, they're going to get blamed. If they clamp down on it and censor it off, they're going to get blamed. They can't win, and this is going to put fleets under a lot of internal political stress, which is utterly unnecessary. The best place for the fleet credit system as it currently stands, and as I see it, is in the bin. And I hate to say that about anything in Star Trek Online. I really hope I'm wrong, I really hope I've missed something, but I don't think I have. I am going to end the video here, ladies and gentlemen, not least because I need to lower my blood pressure. Until next time.